There are stories that a nation would rather forget. Wounds too raw, too shameful, too complex. But sometimes forgetting is not an option. This is the story of one such wound, a national betrayal, one that spanned decades and silenced thousands. In today's video, we are tackling one of the most harrowing and controversial chapters in recent British history, the grooming gang scandal. This is a story of institutional failure, unimaginable suffering, and the long ongoing fight for justice and reform. With this story, my aim is to raise awareness, honor the survivors, and help empower all of us to fight against such abuse. Grooming is a calculated process where perpetrators build trust with a child or a vulnerable person, only to exploit and abuse them, often sexually. Grooming gangs take this to a horrifying scale. Groups of adults, often working together, target vulnerable children, particularly girls, using gifts, attention, and false promises to lure them in. Once trust is established, the abuse escalates, with victims isolated from their families and communities and subjected to repeated exploitation. The tactics they use are chillingly systematic. Number one, targeting, spotting vulnerable, often isolated children. Number two, trust building, showering them with gifts, affection, and promises. Number three, isolation, cutting them off from support networks. Number four, exploitation and control, using threats, shame, and violence to maintain dominance and silencing the victim, effectively caging them in to endure years of abuse. In the shadows of Britain's northern towns, a silent crisis grew for over 2 decades. It preyed on society's most vulnerable young girls, many from broken homes or in the care of the state. What began as whispers in council offices and police briefings would eventually erupt into one of the most disturbing child sexual exploitation scandals in modern British history. The first alarm was raised in the early 2000s. In the South Yorkshire town of Rotherham, local care workers raised concerns that taxi drivers were picking up girls from care homes and abusing them. Names were passed to the police and local council, but nothing was done. The following year, Dr. Angie Heal, a strategic drugs analyst with the South Yorkshire Police, submitted detailed reports highlighting the use of narcotics to facilitate the sexual abuse of children in Rotherham and Sheffield. Her findings were explicit, but her warnings were ignored. In 2003, MP Anne Cryer stood before Parliament, one of the first national figures to publicly confront the issue. She warned that gangs of Asian men were grooming underage white girls in her West Yorkshire constituency of Keighley. For her efforts, she was mocked, dismissed as an alarmist or even a racist. In 2004, a Channel 4 documentary attempted to spotlight the emerging crisis in Bradford, but the network had to delay its broadcast, anxious over the ethnic sensitivities surrounding the allegations. This pattern of silence, suppression, and fear would become tragically familiar. The first major conviction came nearly a decade after the earliest reports. In 2010, 5 men in Rotherham were found guilty of child sexual abuse. At the time, Sir Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecutions. While conversations were welcomed, they barely scratched the surface. In 2011, investigative journalist Andrew Norfolk of The Times began receiving tip-offs about widespread child sexual exploitation in Rotherham. His reporting was meticulous, courageous, and damning. He uncovered a network of abuse involving predominantly Pakistani heritage men who had targeted vulnerable white girls with chilling precision. His reporting forced authorities to confront what they had long ignored, leading to the first major convictions in Rotherham, and later the arrest and conviction of 20 men in Huddersfield. In Huddersfield, 2018 marked a turning point. 20 men, mostly of Pakistani origin, with a Sikh ringleader, were convicted of 120 offences, including rape, trafficking, and indecent assault. By 2021, the number of convicted men linked to this case had risen to 41, receiving a combined 221 years in prison. Despite these prosecutions, thousands of cases remained untouched. Survivors cried out for justice, authorities offered apologies, but rarely accountability. If you're wondering, why did it take so long? At least 10 official inquiries have since revealed a grim truth. Authorities often fail to act, fearing accusations of racism, lacking resources, or simply refusing to believe the victim. Some cases were downgraded from rape to lesser charges, with officials claiming children as young as 13 years old had consented to their abuse. Data on perpetrators' ethnicity was rarely collected, making it nearly impossible to grasp the true scale of the problem. Authorities in towns like Rotherham, Rochdale, and Telford hesitated to investigate or prosecute offenders because many came from South Asian communities. So they did not want to hurt certain religious sentiments, instigating communal unrest. Rather than confront the abusers, institutions looked away, turned a blind eye to the suffering of victims who were left to deal with the abuse and the aftermath on their own. Compounding the issue was a chronic failure to gather and analyze data. Even into the 2020s, many police forces failed to record the ethnicity of perpetrators. Again, in fear of appearing racist and hurting the sentiments of certain communities. This lack of transparency hindered efforts to understand the scale of the crisis and fueled public mistrust. In 2023, the UK government launched a grooming gang task force. It involved all 43 forces across England and Wales and was supported by data analysts. By May 2024, this operation had led to over 550 arrests and identified more than 4,000 victims. Operation Stalwart, a major police investigation in Rotherham, continued its work into 2024, leading to further convictions. 11 more men were found guilty of abusing vulnerable girls, adding to the already staggering list of perpetrators. But the turning point came in 2025. Baroness Casey, respected for her previous work on institutional dysfunction, released the Casey report. It was the most comprehensive analysis yet, and it did not hold back. It condemned years of systemic negligence, calling for sweeping reforms. Among its 12 recommendations was the introduction of mandatory rape charges for adults who engage in sexual acts with children under 16. In June 2025, the Labour government under Keir Starmer finally reversed its earlier stance. It announced a full-scale national investigation into the organized child sexual abuse. The government pledged to adopt all recommendations from the Casey report and established a new criminal operation under the National Crime Agency. This task force would revisit more than 800 previously dropped cases. That same month, in Rochdale, 7 more men were convicted of 50 offenses committed between 2001 and 2006. To date, over 326 offenders have been jailed in that region alone. Despite these advances, the grooming gang scandal remains unresolved. Thousands of victims are still waiting for justice. Many live with the trauma of being ignored, disbelieved, or blamed by the very institutions meant to protect them. Debate continues to swirl around the role of ethnicity. Earlier reports, including a 2020 Home Office review, argued that most group based offenders were mostly white. But this finding was based on incomplete national data. The 2025 Casey report acknowledged these flaws and pointed to a clear overrepresentation of Pakistani heritage men in specific regions, including Greater Manchester, South Yorkshire, and West Yorkshire. This new awareness has prompted changes in police data collection. Ethnicity and nationality are now reported in all cases of group based child sexual exploitation, providing a clear picture for future policy and prevention. The grooming gang scandal is not just a failure of law enforcement, it is a failure of culture, politics, and society. For years, Britain allowed vulnerable children, mostly girls from working class and care backgrounds, to be brutalized by organized network of abusers. Not because the system didn't know, but because it chose not to act. Today, the government has finally begun to confront the depths of this crisis. But whether the new initiatives lead to real accountability or just serve as damage control remains to be seen. For the survivors, though, justice is not just a courtroom verdict, it is acknowledgement, it is belief, it is a system that finally says you were never to blame. In every town where these abuses occurred, there are names we'll never know, young lives altered, innocence stolen. Some have spoken, some never will. We owe them more than platitudes. We owe them the truth, and we owe them a country that will never again look away. Grooming thrives in secrecy and shame. Here is how we can help fight back. Number 1, open communication. Encourage honest conversation with children and teens about their lives and online activities. Number 2, education. Teach young people about healthy boundaries and warning signs of manipulation. Number 3, community vigilance. Look out for signs of grooming. Sudden behavioral changes, unexpected gifts, or new relationships with older individuals are all red flags. Number 3, report concerns. Contact authorities like the police, CEOP, or NSPCC if you suspect grooming. Number 3, support survivors. Believe victims, help them access counseling, and advocate for their rights. If you or someone you know needs help, reach out to NSPCC, Childline, or CEOP. Let's keep this conversation going. Share this video, raise awareness, and together let's fight for a safer, more just society. If we want to protect children, we must listen without fear, without prejudice, and without delay. Share this story, demand answers, stand with the survivors, because the fight for justice is not over. It has just begun. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and stay informed, and never stop fighting for justice. I'll see you in the next one.